Today, we're talking the top buys and sells for fantasy football ahead of week 7. And when you're making your deals this week, be sure to use our trade calculator at yardsperfantasy.com. It's fully customizable, it's free to use, and you'll never lose a trade again. Find it now at yardsperfantasy.com/trade-calculator. The story of the Lions' backfield so far has been David Montgomery. He's the RB8 in fantasy points per game, and he scored a touchdown in 8 straight games dating back to last season. But spoiler alert, Jahmyr Gibbs is still the RB1 in Detroit. Gibbs has outsnapped David Montgomery in all but one game. That included week 6, which was the perfect David Montgomery game script with the Lions crushing the Cowboys 47-9. And yet Jahmyr Gibbs played 54% of the snaps to David Montgomery's 31%. I'm not saying Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be the bell cow. He's not. This is always going to be a split. But Jahmyr Gibbs remains the guy that we want out of this backfield for fantasy purposes. Eventually, the touchdown luck is going to run out for David Montgomery. He's going to settle back into that RB2 range. And don't get me wrong, we still want David Montgomery as well. We want running backs and good offenses. But Jahmyr Gibbs, who is also, by the way, scoring as a top 10 running back in fantasy football, he will remain an RB1 while David Montgomery might take a step back into that next tier. So if the Jahmyr Gibbs manager in your league is feeling a little bit uneasy about David Montgomery's success in this offense, then I suggest you swoop in and get yourself a top 10 running back. I talked about Brock Bowers here as a buy after week 1. It was clear he was going to be a focal point in the Raiders offense, and we knew how impressive of a prospect he was coming out of Georgia. And 5 weeks later, that is looking like one of my best recommendations of the season so far. However, I am still pushing Brock Bowers as a buy heading into week 7. That's because while Brock Bowers is the tight end 2 on the season, he has yet to reach his ceiling. That's right, there is still more juice we can squeeze out of this rookie stud. I say that because while he does lead all tight ends in targets, receptions, and receiving yards, Brock Bowers has only scored 1 touchdown. Just 7.3% of his fantasy points has come from touchdowns. Given his targets and receiving production, touchdown regression is going to hit Brock Bowers in such a good way. And that's when any hope of buying Brock Bowers is going to be gone. He will be absolutely impossible to acquire at that point, and you'll be filled with regret for not taking advantage of these early season windows to buy. And now with Devontae Adams off the team, the targets are only going to funnel in Brock Bowers' direction even more. And he's done it with both quarterbacks. Aiden O'Connell took over in week 6, and he immediately peppered Brock Bowers with targets the same way that Minshew did over the first 5 weeks. Not every buy in fantasy football has to be a buy low. So in a year where the tight end production is down across the board, it is such a great advantage to roster the guy who is the locked in number 1 at the position. Brock Bowers is not this year's Sam LaPorta. He's better. And if you believe the touchdown regression hits this week against the Rams, who have allowed 3 touchdowns to the position in 5 games, then you can play this pick'em on Underdog. Lock in your pick now and use promo code YARDSPER to get a free pick and a deposit offer of up to $1,000. That's promo code YARDSPER on Underdog. Let's get it. Trey McBride is another repeat buy. But like Brock Bowers, Trey McBride is in line for some major touchdown regression. In a good way. McBride's only touchdown on the season came on a fumble recovery. Yet he leads all tight ends in targets per route. And despite missing a game with a concussion, Trey McBride is number 2 in targets, target share, and receptions. He also leads all tight ends in air yards and deep targets, and he's top 5 in receiving yards. This is an elite tight end who picked up right where he left off in 2023. Kyler Murray is going to continue to lean on him whether Marvin Harrison Jr. is on the field or not. I was asked on Twitter this week, how could I possibly be touting Trey McBride as a buy when he's at the height of his cost, coming off an 8-catch, 96-yard performance? My answer was 1, it's okay to buy high. But 2, we have not yet seen Trey McBride's ceiling until that touchdown regression comes knocking. There is room to go up for Trey McBride. We want to dominate at this position. Buy. DK Metcalf is coming off back-to-back dud performances of 7.8 and 7.5 fantasy points. However, he has 30 targets over the last 3 weeks. He's number 2 among wide receivers in routes run, and he's number 5 in targets on the season. The Seahawks have been a fantasy points factory this season, and DK Metcalf is going to be a major part of that moving forward. I mean, prior to week 5, DK Metcalf had 3 straight performances of 28.9, 20.4, and 15.4 fantasy points. And Metcalf was incredibly close to having a massive day in week 6 as well. He had a 52-yard touchdown that was called back on penalty. He just missed a touchdown at the end of the half with his toe just out of bounds. And Geno Smith just underthrew him on what could have been another long touchdown in the second quarter. This is not the Seahawks offense from the Pete Carroll days, where DK Metcalf is fighting for every scrap in a low-volume offense that oftentimes means DK Metcalf disappoints. It's a new era in Seattle. Geno Smith leads all quarterbacks in pass attempts through 6 weeks, and it's not even close. And as a result of that, DK Metcalf already has 3 games with more than 10 targets. That happened just twice in all of 2023 and 4 times in 2022. He's top 5 in receiving yards, top 10 in yards after catch, and number 7 in air yards. This could end up being an all-time season for DK Metcalf. I am buying everywhere I can. Before we get into my sells for week 7, I just want to throw out a few names that you should be buying low heading into week 7. Maybe you could even get thrown into some of these bigger deals and stash them on your bench, anticipating a breakout in the second half of the season. I'm talking about guys like Rome Odunze, Blake Corum, Trey Benson, Jalen Wright, Kamani Vidal, and Roschon Johnson. These are all guys with league-winning upside that if their situations evolve, their situations change, they're going to be major contributors to your fantasy team. They're super cheap to acquire right now. Get them thrown into these bigger deals. I don't care how you do it. Get them, stash them. It's going to pay off. Sam LaPorta has been one of the biggest disappointments in fantasy football this season. However, he's coming off back-to-back top 12 weeks, and he just scored a season-high 12.2 fantasy points in week 6. In fact, he gave us an exciting highlight reel 52-yard touchdown against the Cowboys. He's back, right? Well, while that long touchdown was awesome, it came on a trick play, and it was Sam LaPorta's only catch and only target on the game. Yes, in a game where Jared Goff threw for over 300 yards and the Lions scored 47 points, Sam LaPorta was targeted 1 time on a trick play. Wasn't even a real target. He hasn't had more than 5 targets in a game all season. He has just a 10.1% target share, and he has 1 catch in the red zone. Part of this is because the team doesn't need to throw a ton and play from behind anymore because the Lions' defense is actually good. And when they do throw, they are prioritizing target hog Amon-Ra St. Brown, matchup nightmare out of the backfield Jahmyr Gibbs, and breakout playmaker Jameson Williams. That leaves very little left for the tight end. Sam LaPorta will have his weeks, but he's not going to be anything close to what you thought you were getting when you drafted him way too high this summer. What I would be doing is trying to package Sam LaPorta with some other pieces to move up to a Brock Bowers or a Trey McBride. Najee Harris broke through for 20.2 fantasy points in week 6. It was his best performance since week 18 of last year. He did it by compiling 122 yards and a touchdown against a poor Raiders defense. Good for him. I'm happy for him. Proud of you, buddy. However, with Jaylen Warren returning to the field, Harris's big day came on a season-low opportunity share while playing less than 50% of the snaps. And Jaylen Warren is only going to become more involved as he gets healthy. This was his first game back from a multi-week injury. And up until that point, Najee Harris had shown no signs of being anything more than a 3 yards and a cloud of dust type of runner this year. Maybe this is the start of a turnaround, but I'm not buying it. If anyone in your league thinks it is, though, make them an offer. And do it before the Steelers run into a tough Jets defense in week 7.